What's up, Broncos country, and happy Friday. Welcome back inside the UC Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. Team reporter and host Sydney Jones here. And coming up on today's episode, we'll hear from head coach Nathaniel Hackett as he gives the final injury report ahead of the Broncos' Week 10 matchup in Nashville. Plus, Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla joins the show for a game preview. All that and more on tonight's episode. Broncos hit the road to head to Nashville, Tennessee tomorrow. They are set to face the Titans on Sunday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. We heard from head coach Nathaniel Hackett today for the last time before Sunday's game, and he discussed how he's prepared the team for this physical matchup.
It's funny. As a coach, you present all the different things that you want to attack through the game plan. You present the mentality that you're going to be facing each week. And every team is physical. I mean, every team wants to be physical. We want to be physical. The Titans want to be physical. That's what you're always preaching. You never know till game day, but it's made aware that that's what this team, really thrives on.
Plus, Coach Hackett talked about what he and the team learned about winning on the road in London.
I mean, I thought it's such a different experience because we were there for so long. I thought it was great for our team to get away, to be able to bond, to have tons of meals together and hang out and be in a foreign land. I mean, there were so many great things about that, and I love that trip. I've done it a lot of times. But it was just good to see those guys come together. I mean, we look at, all these games on the road, a lot of them, I mean, they've been very close games, and we're a couple plays away, and that in the end, that's what it comes down to. Guys got to make plays. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time situations.
And as we wrap up the top news of the day, let's take a look at the final injury report. Coach Hackett ruled outside linebacker Baron Browning, wide receiver KJ Hamler, and fullback and tight end Andrew Beck out from Sunday's game. And offensive lineman Cam Fleming and safety Justin Simmons are questionable. Coach Hackett also said that cornerback Darius Phillips, outside linebacker Nick Bonito, and wide receiver Kendall Hinton are also questionable with an illness. Coach Hackett went on to update the media on Cam Fleming's injury and why the team has suffered so many hamstring injuries this season.
It's a communication with our medical staff and him to find out if he's able to compete out there, if he can go. We don't want to get too much reps for him during the week, but we want to be sure that he's able to test it and do what's right. So we'll continually evaluate that. We've got really good people here, and everybody's doing everything we can to get these guys to be out in practice, in the games, and be able to play at a high level. Those things, they happen. It's part of the game. Some are early in practice, some are middle of practice, and you never know when that's going to happen. And some guys are more susceptible than others. I mean, there's so many different things that go into that. It's not just one thing, and we're going to do everything we can to prevent that.
Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla for a game preview. Aric, happy Friday, first and foremost. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, Aric, seems like there's been some good energy in the locker room this week. I feel like everyone is a little bit rested coming off the bye week. How are you feeling heading to this game?
I'm good. I'm ready for a football game. It feels like it's been a long time.
It's been a while
since the Broncos have played, especially a normal game with the London game here for the bye, and then Russ didn't play the week before that. So it feels like a long time since we've just had a normal football game. Got one this week against the Titans, one that, as I'm sure we'll talk about, the Broncos they desperately need to win this football game.
Yeah. Aric, we've heard a lot of talk this week from Coach Hackett and Russell Wilson about correcting third down issues that we've seen. Aric, how do you want to see them come out on Sunday and really address those as they face a really tough, Titans defense?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be helped a little bit because the Titans are missing some of their top defenders. Bud Dupree's not going to play. Jeffrey Simmons, Amani Hooker. I mean, there's some Zach Cunningham. There's some good guys on that Titans defense that are not going to play. So the Broncos should get a little bit of an edge there, which the Broncos have been beaten up, so it's nice. You never want to see anyone hurt, but it's nice that the Broncos opponents are having to kind of deal with some of the same things that the Broncos are. But on third down in particular, we mentioned first and second down being better there. It's partially that. You have to make sure that you're in third and manageable, but at the same time, Sydney, we haven't seen the Broncos really convert those manageable third downs either in recent weeks, and so they've got to be able to, whether it's schematic, which Justin Outen talked about earlier this week, saying we can do some things, we can change some things around to make sure that on third down we're taking advantage of matchups. We've seen some teams, zone defense is up in the NFL. They're challenging teams. And so Justin Outten said, hey, maybe we can have some play designs where we've got a man beater on one side, a zone beater on the other. We saw that, of course, on the final play of that Colts game when Russ threw the incompletion to Cortland, had, of course, KJ Hamler there on the other side. So that's a schematic option. And then, I mean, kind of just more simply, the Broncos players just have to make plays. You just have to come up big in those moments. This is the top-ranked third down defense in the league, so it's not going to be easy to do that. Right. But listen, this is November football, December football, January, February. I mean, if you want to play meaningful games at this time of year, you're going to be in these tough games where, you know, 1 third down here or there could be the difference in who wins the football game. The Broncos have to find a way to be the ones who make that play.
Aric, you mentioned some of the injuries on the Titans. We saw the final injury report earlier in the show. KJ Hamler, Baron Browning, Andrew Beck, they're all going to be out on Sunday. What concerns you there?
Well, you know, I mean, KJ, obviously, his speed, he opens things up. You've seen some of these Greg Dulcich plays in recent weeks, and KJ's been a part of that. I know he hasn't necessarily gotten the ball every time, but he's dragging defenders away at times. So they'll miss him there. Andrew Beck played 9 plays against the Jaguars, so it's not like he's kind of an every down player, but he allows you to do certain things with certain packages. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, do the Broncos go away from those plays? Do they have somebody else that they can put in at fullback? If you're on the goal line, maybe you can put a defensive lineman or an extra offensive lineman down there, but middle of the field, maybe it's a little bit different. So we'll have to see there. And then, Baron Browning, just the outside linebacker is going to be a position to watch because Nick Bonito is listed as questionable. Yep. He did not practice with an illness on Friday. Jonathan Kongbo on the practice squad, but he did not practice on Friday. We don't know, of course, what his ailment is because he's not on the active roster, so they're not required to disclose that. But you're down here, you're thin at outside linebacker because Baron Browning's ruled out, like you mentioned. And so whether it's Jacob Martin, the new guy, whether it's, Zach McLeod, whether it's Jonathan Cooper, and if Nick Bonito's able to come back and play, that'd be great. But the Broncos are going to have to kind of figure out, even with those guys, how do we stop Derrick Henry? How do we stop this rushing attack? You know, maybe you go bigger up front. We'll just have to see what happens there. But there definitely are some concerns. But listen, it's the NFL. Every week you're going to have injuries. Nothing insurmountable here. I think the Broncos can still win despite missing these guys.
Aric, one topic that's been, big discussion this week is just Russell Wilson and his wristband. I thought Coach Hackett, put it plainly this week. If it helps, why not use it? You think maybe the wristband will be key for the second half of the season?
Yeah,
it's so funny to talk about that.
It is. That's where we're at right now at 3-5. And if the team were 6-2, you probably wouldn't be talking about this at all. Listen, it worked against Jacksonville, I guess. I mean, you scored 3 touchdowns for only the second time this season, which is hard to believe. But yeah, again, anything at this point can help, and I think it's more indicative of the lengths they're trying to go to try to figure this thing out. It's not necessarily just about the wristband, and for people saying, "Oh, it's too big a deal," well, it does give you more time at the line of scrimmage, gives you more time to make checks. Maybe Nathaniel Hackett's able to stay in Russell Wilson's ear for a split second longer and say, "Hey, look at this," or "You've got this coming here against this defense." It makes it so that in a loud stadium on the road, there's not as much miscommunications with the play call. So that's part of it. But I think the bigger thing is just it shows that they're trying different things and they're not stuck in their ways and saying, we're going to go down with this ship. No matter what, we're going to do it our way. No, they're trying and they're searching and they're looking for ways to improve this offense and get this thing to a point where you can win football games. And so that's the bigger takeaway here, I think, is they looked around the league and saw, okay, a lot of quarterbacks are wearing wristbands and here's why they're doing it. And then they decided, well, let's try it out ourselves. And it worked well against Jacksonville. They're going to do it this weekend against Tennessee, and we'll kind of see from there.
Aric, I know Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill, he was back at practice this week, but he was listed as questionable today for Sunday's game. Not knowing if it's going to be him or Malik Willis that plays, how much of a challenge is it for this defense and, preparing for 2 very different quarterbacks?
Yeah, very different. And Mike Vrabel said they're essentially going to see how things go on Saturday with Ryan Tannehill before making a decision. Yeah. He was full on Thursday, so it's a little bit surprising to see him go back to limited on Friday. Maybe they're just being precautious. Maybe they're trying to get the Broncos to think this through a little bit more. But, yeah, with Tannehill, you've got a guy who's obviously more experienced. He's played in playoff games. He can be really good off play action. He can make these throws. He'll make mistakes at times, but I believe entering this game, he's gone 3 straight games without an interception. Their passing yardage is a little bit higher, of course, with him. Malik Willis, though, he brings kind of an entirely different skill set. You saw him run a lot of read option stuff against the Chiefs, which challenges your defense. With his speed, he's going to get some chunk plays with his legs if he's the one who plays, but only had 5 completions against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Clearly not as comfortable yet through the air.
Sure.
And so, I'm not quite sure, to be honest, who we're going to see on Sunday. I do think it's probably a little bit of an edge for the Broncos if it is Malik Willis, just because he doesn't have the experience. And this is going to be, if the Broncos do get a lead, which you hope they're able to do and get ahead, it puts the Titans in a position where they're going to have to throw the football. I think that, if you force Malik Willis to throw the football, I think you're in a better spot than kind of the alternative there with Ryan Tannehill. But, it does seem like it's 50-50, and, I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Well, there's no doubt the toughest challenge is going to be to try and stop or slow down, I should say, Titans running back Derrick Henry. I know you mentioned him a little bit earlier. Aric, what do you want to see, from this defense as they try and contain him? Yeah,
I mean, that's it. You got to contain him. You're not going to stop him entirely. The Broncos have actually had some success against him. I think when they played here in 2019. Well, yeah, in 2020 he went over 100 yards, but in 2019 they did a much better job of holding him in check.
Right.
The Broncos, of course, won that game pretty convincingly, and that's actually what started this shift to Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. So they've had experience tackling him. I think one, you have to get to him early. If you let him kind of build up this, both on a play and in the game. So on a play, if you let him get to that second level past the defensive line, you're in trouble because it's going to be hard for Pat Surtain's improved his tackling this year, but that's a tough ask. It's a tough ask for Kareem Jackson, who's a great tackler. So if you can get him at the line of scrimmage with multiple guys, that's going to help. But also if you can set the tone early and say, okay, well, we're going to tackle you for a loss here, or we're going to hold you to 2 or 3 yard gains, you don't let him get into that rhythm. And I think you're better off that way. And then, of course, the other thing you can do to help yourself is get out to a lead, because if especially if you're able to somehow get out to a 10-point lead on these guys, they're still going to stick with the run for a little bit, but it forces you, like I said a minute ago, to move toward the passing game away from Derrick Henry. Right. Listen, Cindy, he's going to make his plays. You're going to have to be willing to shake those off and kind of get back up, be ready for the next play. It's going to be a physical game. These guys are probably going to hurt on Monday morning.
Oh, yeah.
Going to feel a lot better with a win, though. So might as well make the tackle at the line of scrimmage, try to hold this guy in check, and force the quarterback to beat you.
Yep, like you said, it's going to be a physical game on Sunday. Definitely a lot to look for. Last but not least, Aric, what's your game prediction?
Yeah, I do think this is kind of the last stand for the Broncos, just in terms of, it feels like a tipping point where we've said that a lot this week.
Yeah,
but if the Broncos win this game, I think they're able to go on a little bit of a run here, still be in that playoff conversation. If you lose this game, I just worry that at 3-6, you're going to not check out, but it just kind of the reality of the situation sinks in. So I think you're going to get an inspired Broncos team. I think they're going to play hard. This is a Titans team that is coming off a really emotional loss to the Chiefs. They're without a lot of their best defensive players. We don't know if their quarterback's going to play. So I think it's a good place for the Broncos to go in and get an upset. I don't think it's going to be pretty by any means, but I think the Broncos find a way to get it done. I'll say 14-13.
All right. I like it. Well, fingers crossed they come home with the win. Aric, appreciate your time.
You got it.
That'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in today and every day. Don't forget, kickoff on Sunday is at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube on Monday following the game. I'll see you guys then.